Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 79 based on novel. So let's start. After he shared everything with everyone through his spiritual detection, he started to act. As his figure flashed, he disappeared into the air. At this point, he wasn't standing beside Wang Cha. However, he had already shared his plan with everyone. He was going to stop the three brothers and take the two cubs away. Wang Cha quickly followed him. Hu Yuhao was the most important to her. Furthermore, their abilities were greatly enhanced when they were together. However, it was also at this moment that the male bear's attack arrived. His sharp, bloody claws descended from the sky, and his terrifying aura swept over everyone. The thick, bloody smell was nauseating. Wang Cha was about to advance, but she sensed the lethal threat and had no choice but to stop. Her wings beat, and she retreated quickly. At this point, Hu Yuhao had disappeared. Even his spiritual detection had disappeared. The last information Wang Cha received from him was to stay where she was to help the rest and not to follow him. He wanted to use a special method to deal with the three brothers. Even though Hu Yuhao was credible, Wang Cha was still a little frantic at this point. However, the male bear's attack was like a dancing, bloody cyclone as it swept towards everyone. Wang Cha was also one of its targets, and she couldn't escape. However, Hu Yuhao wasn't the only one who had moved away from the team. As Hu Yuhao moved, someone else also moved. As her slender figure flashed, she turned into a golden light projection that was faded into the forest. She moved in the same direction as Hu Yuhao. It was Wang Cha. Cai Maya led the team as Zhong Lashuan, Han Ruoruo, Wang Cha, Li Yongyu, and Mo Xian worked together to resist the male bear's attack. The strength of the dark golden terraclaw bear was explosive. Even though this 10,000-year dark golden terraclaw bear was only left with his spirit, his fighting style didn't change at all. His terrifying fighting strength erupted and suppressed everyone. With Cai Maya's cultivation, it wasn't difficult for her to escape. However, she needed to protect her students. This was especially true for students like Mo Xian, who didn't possess any real fighting strength. Hu Yuhao didn't bother about the fight on the other side right now. He knew that the two bears couldn't kill them with Dean Cai around. What he had to do now was turn the situation around. It was only this way that his friends could escape from danger. Why didn't he drag Wang Cha along? That was because he wasn't confident. Even with Wang Cha, could he possibly challenge three Soul Doluo? He decided to act alone because he would be completely disregarding any danger. As he burst forward, his third eye opened. His soul thrusters and spiritual detection were also initiated. At this point, he heard a sonorous dragon's roar. It was very unexpected, but it was filled with rage. Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection covered a large area. He immediately turned his head in the direction of the roar. He was appalled to discover that Wang Cha had also separated from the team. Furthermore, her target was the female bear. Not good. Even though Wang Cha had demonstrated great abilities, Hu Yuhao didn't believe that she could fight a 10,000-year dark golden terraclaw bear by herself. Even Elder Shen had once mentioned how strong a 10,000-year dark golden terraclaw bear was. At the 10,000-year level, it was one of the best among the savage beasts. However, it was too late for Hu Yuhao to help Wang Cha at this point. Furthermore, could he even do anything with his current strength? It was time to make a decision. Hu Yuhao grit his teeth, and a huge cannon barrel was lifted onto his shoulder. This cannon was dark blue, and there were countless rose patterns on its body. If were here, she would definitely recognize it as a giant lightning cannon. However, Hu Yuhao's cannon was covered by a mysterious glow. Whether it was the size or the number of formation arrays, cannon couldn't compare to this one. This was a giant lightning cannon, but it was also a Class 7 heavy cannon called the Lightning God's Fury. He Kai-Tu was the one who had developed it. Before they set off on this journey, Hu Yuhao had naturally told his partners where he was going. He Kai-Tu passed his Lightning God's Fury to him, and also gave him 3 compatible stationary soul cannon shells. However, this heavy cannon was different from the one He Kai-Tu had used previously. He Kai-Tu had never used a stationary soul cannon before. This modified Class 7 cannon possessed the strongest offensive strength among all the soul tools that He Kai-Tu possessed. That was why he passed it to Hu Yuhao. Intense bolts of lightning were unleashed, and the Lightning God's Fury revealed layers and layers of bluish-purple halos. Hu Yuhao's speed didn't decrease as he burst forward, but his charging of the cannon persisted. The strongest aspect of a stationary soul cannon was that its might didn't lie in the cannon itself, but the cannon shell. Firing the cannon didn't expend a lot of soul power. Although it was costly to make, it was undoubtedly more terrifying than a soul cannon that was fired purely using soul power. Hu Yuhao didn't dare to waste his soul power, and thus he chose this cannon. Rumbling sounds rolled forth, and Hu Yuhao flew back due to the recoil, knocking into 2 huge trees. A bolt of bluish-purple lightning flashed in the air before disappearing. Why did Hua Yuhao charge his cannon while bursting forward earlier? He was flung back to where he wanted to go. He exploited the burst of speed brought about by this recoil. He didn't even bother with the female bear and Wang Cha, who were both on the other side. He did whatever he needed to the best of his abilities. Hua Yuhao was aware that this cannon couldn't possibly kill the female bear, but it could at least stall her, given the strength of a Class 7 stationary soul cannon shell. Wang Cha would then be afforded time to escape. At the same time, stalling the female bear would be very helpful for his side. Dealing with the male bear's spirit and preventing both bears from teaming up together was the key to resolving the problem. Hua Yuhao burst forward after he did what he needed to do. The light from his eye of destiny shone brightly, and layers of distorted ripples started to appear on his body. He instantly disappeared into the forest. Wang Cha wasn't slower than Hua Yuhao. Suddenly, an indescribable feeling caused her to stop. At this point, she already saw the hysterical female bear rushing over. In the next instant, she saw something unforgettable. A streak of intense, bluish-purple light swept by. It was so bright that the entire forest turned bluish-purple. All the plants and trees were illuminated with the same color. Following this, the female bear was swallowed by the bluish-purple light. The terrifying lightning was changed into a shocking beam of light that shot into the sky. Rumbling thunder echoed in 3 waves, and the immense impact swept the entire area that the bluish-purple light had covered earlier. All the plants and trees were turned into ash by the terrifying impact and destructive force. Wang Cha crossed her arms in front of her body, and a layer of thick golden light emanated from her body. However, her body was still flung backward by the force. She flew close to 100 meters before she managed to stabilize her body. However, an intense numbness was running through her body. Yes, this was how terrifying a Class 7 stationary soul cannon was. Everything in front of Wang Cha had turned to ash. The female bear was smashed down, and her dark golden hide had turned charcoal black. Gusts of thick smoke rose from her fur as she collapsed to the ground in pain, lightning crackling around her. Even the Sun Moon Empire, which possessed the strongest soul tools, classified stationary soul cannons that were at Class 7 as weapons of mass destruction. They couldn't be sold. No one knew how many Class 7 stationary soul cannons the Sun Moon Empire possessed, but they had already become the biggest threat to the rest of the empires on the continent because of them. The cannon shell that Hua Yuhao just fired was worth 800,000 gold soul coins. That wasn't even including the time that He Kai-Tu had spent on developing it. If it were auctioned off, the cannon would be worth more than 3 million gold soul coins. What if was fired towards an elite team of soldiers? Everything in a 300-meter radius would be turned to ash. Any soul master below a 6-ringed cultivation could forget about escaping. How many people possessed strength as immense as Wang Cha? That was the reason why Hua Yuhao had dared to fire that cannon shell. At this point, the air was filled with intense undulations of lightning. The frightening explosive force shocked everyone. Even though the shockwave only generated a surging gust of air when it reached them, this sudden explosion changed the situation for Shrek Academy's team. Hua Yuhao retracted his spiritual detection after he fired his cannon. The terrifying bolts of lightning were too much for his spiritual power to handle. The huge explosion sounded behind him, but he continued to dart forward. At this point, he placed the second cannon shell into the giant lightning cannon on his shoulder. As the surging gust of air reached him, he initiated his spiritual detection again. This time, his target was the cave. The 3 brothers weren't affected even after the first cannon shell exploded. However, the explosion still caught their attention. Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren drifted towards the cave as they tapped their staves on the ground. Zhong Litian didn't appear, and no one knew where he was hiding. However, it wasn't difficult to guess that he had focused most of his energy on everyone from Shrek Academy. Hua Yuhao's second cannon shell was fired at this time. When the cannon was fired, he revealed his concealed figure. A horrifying bluish-purple radiance was unleashed, and its targets were the 2 cubs in the cave. What were Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren's cultivations? They were evil soul Doluor. In a duel, their abilities weren't inferior to a titled Doluor. Their spiritual power and senses were very strong. They immediately sensed the threat that was coming. At this point, they had already arrived at the cave. Any normal person wouldn't enter the cave even if he was threatened. However, they couldn't give up on the 2 cubs in the cave. The cubs were the most important reason they were here. Hua Yuhao had experienced many live fights during his training in the Ultimate Soldier Plan. Both his situational judgment and understanding of a human's psychological mindset had reached a high standard. Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren made their choice immediately. They only had one choice: defend. They could only defend against the attack unleashed towards the cave and protect the 2 cubs. They lifted their staves at the same time, and bloody light started to spread out again. In such a situation, all they could do was pour out all their soul power. 2 beams of sanguine light were converted into a huge, bloody red protective barrier. The entire cave was covered by this barrier. Boom! If he Kai-tu knew that someone was trying to resist his Class 7 stationary soul cannon shell directly, he would be elated. Why were stationary soul cannons so powerful? It was because their explosive strength could match the all-out attack of a rank 80 soul master the moment they were fired. While Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren were very strong, evil soul masters were only strong because they were evil. In terms of cultivation, they were still 8-ringed soul doluor. They were confident of success, but were faced with a sudden attack. In a state of panic, they weren't able to unleash their all-out defense. In addition, they weren't skilled at defending, either. As the terrifying sounds of crackling lightning echoed out, countless bolts of lightning struck, and the two elders were appalled to discover that the intimidating explosive force had torn apart their defense. The bloody barrier dissipated. As lightning flashed, the thick protective barrier was forcefully torn apart. The horrifying explosive force also swept the two of them up. Lightning was formed by the vital energy of heaven and earth. This was what Electrolux had told Huo Yuhao. Any form of undead would be harmed far more greatly than normal, regardless of what element they once were, if they were struck by lightning, because lightning contained the vital energy of heaven and earth. When some undead became too strong, they might attract lightning from the sky due to their evil aura. This was called a lightning catastrophe. Why was Electrolux so strong in his original world? One important reason was that he was an unprecedented light-type necromancer. He used his own body to summon the light element of the undead, thus removing any evil energy from them. In this way, they wouldn't attract the lightning catastrophe. Huo Yuhao had guessed some of the abilities that the three evil soul masters possessed. It had to be something related to summoning soul beast spirits. They were even able to summon the spirit of a 10,000-year dark golden terraclaw bear. If this wasn't their main ability, they probably weren't soul doluor, but titled doluor. That was why Huo Yuhao used the giant lightning cannon. The power of lightning was more effective against these two evil soul masters. Anyone whose life was under threat would definitely use whatever treasures they had without any hesitation as long as they could protect their life. The two brothers weren't exceptions either. When they realized something was amiss, they immediately unleashed their all. A huge number of bloody spirits surged out from their staves and protected their bodies, resisting the power of lightning. At the same time, they also revealed their martial soul true bodies. In this state, Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren's bodies started to distort. The grayish scales became finer, and even their eyes turned blood red. They turned and curled up into two huge grayish snakes. Shrek Academy's research into martial souls was very advanced. Huo Yuhao could immediately recognize what their martial souls were. Underworld Snake, a classic evil soul master's martial soul. It had existed for a long time, and was a very strong soul among evil soul masters. Furthermore, Huo Yuhao could vaguely recall Elder Mu emphasizing how special an underworld snake was. However, he had no time to think about it at this point. The beast spirits were immediately destroyed in the face of lightning. However, these beast spirits appeared freer and relieved when they were killed. Even their indignation was dispelled as they were killed. They were like the avenging spirits that Huo Yuhao had once cleansed before. Huo Yuhao couldn't be bothered with the remaining cannon shell at this point. He unleashed his imitation with the enhancement of his Eye of Destiny. After his soul power reached rank 50, all his spirit eye's soul skills were enhanced. This was his strongest advantage from the million-year Sky Dream Ixworm. He had not used imitation for a long time, not because it wasn't strong enough, but because he hid it due to the surprises it brought him after it was enhanced. He tried his best not to use it. Imitation wasn't an offensive or defensive soul skill. Compared to the Snow Empress 3 ultimate techniques, the Dark Golden Terraclaws, the Ice Explosion technique, Spiritual Shock, and other powerful soul skills, it didn't seem very eye-catching. Even Huo Yuhao's partners didn't really pay attention to this soul skill. However, it had become an extremely strong soul skill after it evolved. The only drawback was that his opponents might be prepared if he kept using it. As it became stronger, Huo Yuhao could extend its use to a greater region. Right now, the region it could cover was around 10 meters in diameter. At the same time, he also possessed a special form of this soul skill that allowed him to carry out continuous assimilation. To put it more aptly, it allowed him to assimilate into the environment like a chameleon. Environmental assimilation became more and more effective as an environment became more complex and colorful. Huo Yuhao couldn't conceal himself, but he could make it seem as if he were hidden as he imitated his surroundings. However, he could still be discovered through meticulous observation or detected through spiritual power. His ability to assimilate into the environment was directly related to his soul power. As his Eye of Destiny was activated, his imitation had entered its strongest state. So, he appeared to disappear earlier. If Huo Yuhao stayed completely still, it wasn't possible to spot him with one's naked eyes. However, any movement would cause a change in the color patterns in the air, which would be detectable if one was sharp enough. In fact, Huo Yuhao didn't know how much further his imitation could evolve. It was closely related to the Sky Dream Iceworm. Imitation wasn't a particularly strong soul skill even in the world of soul beasts, or the iceworm species wouldn't be so weak. After all, it was only projecting an illusion, there wasn't any offensive side to it. In addition, the region that it covered was also limited. When the Skydream iceworm allowed Hua Yuhao to choose imitation as his second soul skill, there was a reason behind his decision. Even a weak soul skill could become strong through ceaseless cultivation. Hua Yuhao couldn't cultivate this soul skill directly. However, he possessed the Skydream iceworm's spiritual cultivation. As Skydream's spiritual cultivation continued to fuse with him, it also meant that imitation was being cultivated, making it stronger and stronger. Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren were in extreme pain as they were struck by the cannon shell's lightning blast. While their lives were not in danger, it had taken them a lot of effort to gather all their beast spirit. The deaths of those spirits meant that their abilities were greatly weakened. As a result, the two of them had to use all their soul power to resist so that fewer of their slave spirits would perish. Naturally, they weren't able to observe what was going on around them as they fought off the lightning attack. Hua Yuhao exploited this opportunity to increase his speed significantly. As his body burst forward, he leapt into the air and entered the cave, leaving a gentle undulation behind. As he entered the cave, a thick smell of blood immediately filled his nostrils. He tried to hold his breath and unleashed his dark golden terror claws. He stabbed his claws into the wall of the cave as his body remained in the air. Using his spiritual detection, he had already figured out the layout of the cave. Otherwise, his judgment wouldn't have been so accurate. The cave was around 5 meters high, and extremely wide. It was just that the ground was covered in bloodstains left behind by the female bear while giving birth to her kids. In the corner, 2 dark golden terrorclaw bear cubs not even a meter tall were curled up with their eyes closed. Occasionally, they would squirm in place. Their fur was pitch black, and hadn't turned dark golden yet. From the looks of it, they were like 2 oversized and chubby puppies. At times, they would extend their pinkish-red tongues to lick their lips. Hua Yuhao didn't delay any further. His body swayed in the air before he did a forward somersault. At the same time, he had already unleashed his Snow Empress spirit. The Snow Lady pointed to the 2 cubs, and 2 deep blue beams of light were shot out. The cubs were engulfed by these beams of light, and were enclosed inside 2 blocks of ice. While mature dark golden terrorclaw bears were huge, their cubs were very small in comparison, just like the cubs of any other soul beast. Hua Yuhao drifted down, his hands were covered in blue light. He touched the bodies of the 2 frozen cubs, and they instantly disappeared, swept inside his starlight sapphire ring. Spatial-type soul tools couldn't contain living beings, there was no air inside, so they would suffocate. Another reason was that it might lead to spatial instability, damaging the space inside the soul tool, which would lead to damage to the soul tool itself. But Hua Yuhao currently had no other choice. He tapped into the Snow Empress spirit's low temperature to freeze the 2 cubs temporarily. With the strength of dark golden terrorclaw bears, they wouldn't die quickly. After that, they were stored inside his ring before he brought them away. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easy for him to escape with these 2 cubs. He didn't touch the ground throughout the entire process. As he smacked his right hand down, he used the power of his controlling crane-capturing dragon to push himself back before he exerted force on the wall with his toes. He propelled himself forward and rushed for the exit. However, his claws stabbed into the wall when he was just a couple steps from the exit. He also stuck his body to the wall like an octopus, and his imitation activated again. He seemed to have disappeared, and was completely traceless in the dark cave. Whoosh! A figure entered the cave. It was Zhong Lidi. His figure was covered by a thick, bloody radiance. Right now, the strong evil soul master's appearance was quite unpresentable. Even with his cultivation, it was still a horrible thing to be struck by a Class 7 stationary soul cannon shell off guard. His long robe was torn and tattered, revealing his skin in many areas. His hair was also standing on end. While his staff was still shining, it was no longer as bright as before. The gem at the top of his staff had even cracked slightly. Zhong Lidi's expression was extremely ghastly, and he even appeared to be on the verge of crying. When he unleashed bright, bloody light to illuminate the entire cave, his face turned even more dismal. Liren, someone has beaten us to it. Bastard! Zhong Lidi shouted in fury. His figure flashed as he rushed out of the cave. An 8-ringed soul Doluor was able to fly temporarily. Zhong Liren's voice sounded, that cannon shell earlier must have been at least Class 7. Don't tell me that there are Sun Moon Empire people here. They can't be missing. The female bear was even guarding the cave earlier. How could they have disappeared just like that? Can they fly? Hua Yuhao was completely still as he stuck himself to the wall. He was even holding his breath. He was clear that he would be a dead man if he moved in front of these 2 evil soul masters. Unless it was completely safe, he wouldn't move recklessly. As he maintained his continuous imitation, Zhong Lidi returned again. As he returned, a huge number of beast spirits were released from his staff. They quickly filled the cave. Vicious, Hua Yuhao cursed. As the spirits flew out, a tiger-type beast spirit came straight towards Hu Yuhao. His imitation was indeed strong, and could even imitate the surrounding aura. However, these beast spirits had acute senses. From the change in the tiger-type beast spirit's energy, Hu Yuhao could subtly feel that it had discovered something in his direction. What should he do? He had two choices now: bet on his luck that the beast spirit wouldn't discover him, or act decisively and take the initiative to escape the cave. If he had no luck, this cave would become his burial ground. However, Zhong Liren was guarding the cave outside if he went for the latter option. At this point, a deafening roar came from outside the cave. Following this, the ground started to shake. A ferocious, mighty aura could be felt even from inside the cave. Yes, the female dark golden terraclaw bear had given up on finding her mate and returned. Zhong Lidi's expression changed. Even with their cultivation level, they couldn't underestimate this 10,000-year dark golden terraclaw bear. When the three of them had encircled the male dark golden terraclaw bear earlier, they had needed 3 days to kill him. Although this female bear was in a weakened state now, she might be very explosive if she was provoked. Zhong Lidi scanned the cave once more, then immediately rushed out, worried about Zhong Liren. The tiger-type beast spirit that was closing in on Hu Yuhao was pulled back into the staff. Hu Yuhao was intelligent. When he heard the female bear roaring, he gave up his plan of escaping. He reaped the rewards of his patience. Zhong Lidi was finally gone. However, he couldn't escape, either. The fight outside had already begun. The clash of soul powers caused the ground to shake amidst deafening booms. Intense shockwaves struck the cave and caused echoes to ring out within it. Although Hu Yuhao couldn't see with his eyes, he still had his spiritual detection. As he activated his spiritual detection, he sensed what was going on outside and tried to find an opportunity to escape. The female bear had indeed returned. Her lower body was covered in bloodstains while her upper body was charred. Evidently, she was in great pain after being struck by the cannon shell earlier. However, why did she forsake her mate and return? The three brothers had no intention of letting her off. Not only was she strong, but her spirit was also quite valuable. On the other side, the male bear's spirit had managed to tackle almost the entire team from Shrek. This included Cai Maya, who was a titled Doluor. The three brothers had drawn the female bear away so that they could capture the cubs. However, they hadn't expected to fail. Now that the female bear had returned, Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren vented their anger on her. They released many spirits from their staves. At the same time, their bodies also formed greyish light projections. These projections floated in midair and looked like balls of greyish fog. It was Hu Yuhao's first time seeing such martial souls. After turning into fog, Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren speed soared rapidly. As their figures flashed, they separated to either side, avoiding the female bear's claws. The spirits also started to swarm the bear. At this point, a streak of golden light shone from the female bear's back. The bright light was filled with the might of a king, and a terrifying aura was unleashed. It felt very real, and exuded golden patterns as it spread. After being influenced by this aura, the bear's eyes shone brightly with golden light, and her own aura soared. The spirits that swarmed her started to disperse as they let out pathetic screams. Although they weren't completely destroyed, their powers were weakened considerably. What is this? Zhong Liren shouted, his facial muscles distorted greatly due to his fury. Undoubtedly, the force that had dispersed the spirits didn't come from the female bear. But since it had come, the strength of the dark golden terraclaw bear was bound to increase greatly. More importantly, the three brothers had lost many of their spirits today. They were extremely furious. A golden figure flipped up onto the bear's back and stood on her wide shoulders. When Hu Yuhao used his spiritual detection to sense this person's presence, he was so shocked that he almost muttered a sound. That person was Wang Cha, wielding the golden dragon spear. Wang Cha's face was as cold as ever as she raised the golden dragon spear high above her head. She released the powerful golden aura from before, riveting golden light radiating from her body. The cutting aura was like the sharp edge of a blade as it forced the large mass of beast souls back. What's going on? Hu Yuhao was astonished and amazed and doubtful at the same time. Never in his wildest dreams would he have expected that Wang Cha could form an alliance with this female dark golden terraclaw bear in battle. It seemed like she didn't intend to block the bear when she charged in its direction, and was trying to direct it instead. What kind of ability was this? It was simply too terrifying. Did that mean that someone who possessed the golden dragon martial soul had the ability to command dark golden terraclaw bears? The dark golden terraclaw bear's existence was actually comparable to the golden dragon in terms of lineage. Right when Hu Yuhao was still feeling shocked, the female bear stomped her enormous paws as she charged towards the three brothers. Her body erupted with intense dark golden light as her fur stood on end. Her talons extended from her paws, and huge claws that were at least 2 meters long flickered with chilly light. Her claws crossed each other through the air as countless blade shadows flashed by and reached every corner in a 100-meter radius around her. The beast souls were highly resistant to physical attacks, but the bear's attacks were simply too sharp, and the beast souls were weakened wherever the blades crossed. The three brothers immediately felt an agonizing heartache. They had already lost many beast souls when they came to hunt and slay the male bear, but the male bear's addition had made up for their losses in the end. This continuous battering caused them great suffering, as every beast soul was ultimately part of their strength and fighting ability. Two grey clouds moved out in an instant, and the beast souls retreated along with them to the periphery. Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren glared at Wang Cha, who was still sitting on the female bear's shoulders. The bear couldn't have broken through their siege so easily if it hadn't been for her. The bear didn't care about all this at this moment as she strode towards her lair. There was nothing more important to her than her cubs. All of a sudden, a scarlet golden beam of light arrived on the scene in a flash, and a majestic scarlet gold lion intercepted her. This mighty lion seemed like it was sculpted from scarlet red crystal, and it flickered with brilliant colors. Even the dark golden terraclaw bear's fearsome aura was weakened the moment it appeared. A beast soul. This was actually a beast soul. However, it was so much more powerful and formidable than the other beast souls. Hua Yuhao had wanted to find an opportunity to escape, but this lion's appearance made him settle down once again. This looks like the scarlet golden lion. The scarlet golden lion's status amongst soul beasts was a little inferior to the dark golden terraclaw bear. However, it could be considered a subspecies of golden soul beasts, and was a mutated form of the golden lion king. A scarlet golden lion's power was comparable to a dark golden terraclaw bear if both soul beasts had similar cultivation levels. At least, it had enough strength to fight against the bear. The scarlet golden lion was just a beast soul, but one could tell from its aura that it had possessed at least 30,000 years of cultivation. Of all the soul beasts that Hua Yuhao had seen, besides the several mighty ones that had more than 100,000 years of cultivation, this scarlet golden lion was probably the strongest one in terms of fighting ability. The scarlet golden lion roared into the sky the moment it appeared. Its muscular body that seemed almost material proved how drastically different it was from normal beast souls. The dark golden terraclaw bear paused momentarily, but anything that prevented her from protecting her children was considered an enemy at this moment. She lashed out ferociously with her right claw, and it was a dark golden terraclaw that contained every ounce of her strength. The colossal claw seemed like it was going to tear the sky apart as it descended from the sky and slapped down fiercely. The lion wasn't weak, and it shook its head as a large spherical light projection emanated from its head and immediately expanded to a diameter of more than 10 meters. This light projection was actually the enlarged image of its own head. Clang! The bear's claw was bounced back after the sharp collision, and an intense tremor almost shook Hua Yuhao off of the cave wall. The lion's radiance dimmed for a moment, but quickly returned to normal, and it roared ferociously once more. This lion could actually take a hit from her. It lived up to its name as an entity that was comparable to the dark golden terraclaw. Hua Yuhao had been observing the brothers' beast souls this whole time. He realized that most of these beast souls could only use spiritual attacks, and they used spiritual power to get through to their opponents. However, there were several relatively formidable ones that retained the ability to attack with soul power, and this scarlet golden lion was undoubtedly the best of the best in this category. Hua Yuhao even felt that this lion probably still had almost as much strength as it had when it was still alive. Another sphere of grey fog separated from the lion while Hua Yuhao was still feeling astounded. It transformed into a shadow riding on the scarlet golden lion's back, the eldest of the brothers, Zhong Litian. Zhong Litian's expression wasn't much better than those of his brothers. He had never thought that his plan could be ruined like that, at the hands of a young woman. "Who are you?" Zhong Litian exclaimed as he raised the staff in his hands. The lion charged forward ferociously, and it engaged in battle with the bear as he levitated in midair and gazed at Wang Cha in the distance. Wang Cha said coldly, "Someone that wants your life." Her 6 soul rings sparkled brilliantly as she spoke. Zhong Litian snapped his head around at Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren. "Have we succeeded?" Zhong Lidi's face was black as he replied, "All gone, there's nothing left. It seems like this company isn't that easy to deal with. What should we do?" Zhong Litian's eyes narrowed as a savage aura burst from his body. He said coldly, "Release our origin beast souls. Every single one of them has to die. We won't have to worry about getting what we want as long as they're dead." Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren began to move right when his voice dropped, and 2 beams of light glowed from their bodies. The jewels at the tips of their staves erupted with brilliant and blinding light. Zhong Lidi unleashed a fearsome tiger. This tiger exuded dark green light. It was a netherworld ghost tiger, which was also an entity that stood at the top of the world of soul beasts. Its body looked even more illusory than normal beast souls, but it charged the dark golden terraclaw bear the moment it made a move, and gave the scarlet golden lion more chances to attack. Zhong Liren unleashed a ferocious leopard that shone with brown light. Its skin was also brown, with patterns like golden coins all over its body. It was the smallest of the 3 origin beast souls, but it vanished into the air the moment it appeared, and a brown streak flashed by in the next moment. The fur on the bear's back flew into the sky as part of it was shaved off. Even though she wasn't hurt, the intense pain made her even more hysterical and crazed than before. Hua Yuhao saw the brothers' abilities as evil soul masters with more clarity now after observing them. Their main strength was their enslaved beast souls, which were separated into various categories. The strongest of those souls were probably the origin beast souls that they had just released, and each of them probably only had one, while all the others were just normal beast souls. The female bear was already weak, and she was immediately at a disadvantage and beaten back as the 3 origin soul beasts joined up and assaulted her. Wang Cha made her move right at this moment. She swung the golden dragon spear in her hands and pierced in a certain direction without warning. An indescribable and shrill tearing sound could be heard, and a black gash appeared in the air from this single strike. A brown shadow flickered once and an infuriated roar was heard immediately afterwards. She had actually captured the ghost shadow leopard emperor's movements, and wounded it with just one attack. However, Wang Cha's action also immediately triggered the ghost shadow leopard emperor's wrath. A streak of brown light instantly circled and flickered around the bear crazily. The spear in Wang Cha's hands waltzed continuously. Even though she could accurately predict and grasp the opportunity to defend against the leopard's attacks every time and she was able to hold on with her own fearsome strength, she only had 6 rings. It was not difficult to imagine how powerful these beast souls were since they were these 3 brothers' origin beast souls. Their soul skills were all meant to amplify their beast souls, and their martial soul true bodies in the fog made them incredibly fast, while most physical attacks simply couldn't hurt them at all. The 3 brothers separated in 3 directions as circle after circle of light expanded and continuously amplified their origin beast souls. The truth was that the 3 brothers had no choice but to release their origin beast souls. They would never use their origin beast souls under normal circumstances, as these origin beast souls were tied to their own spirits even though they were extremely powerful. They would also be wounded if any harm came to their origin soul beasts. But Zhong Lidi and Zhong Liren had lost too many beast souls. When Zhong Litian witnessed Wang Cha's abilities, he became a little worried about the other members from Shrek Academy, and so he opted to give everything he had so that he could defeat and kill both the female dark golden terror-claw bear and Wang Cha as quickly as possible. Afterwards, he would take care of the other members from Shrek, as they were absolutely unwilling to let go of the male dark golden terror-claw bear's beast soul. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.